you and I have watched an early cut of the film, there are some things that I think, by the time people are listening to this podcast, they will have seen, for example, a mid and end credit sequence that I don't believe you saw.
I'm so confused about this because I saw it just yesterday at the critic screening, so I presume that's what audiences are going to see. But
Oh, so
now
you had a
I'm
credit
wondering.
sequence?
I did have a post-credit sequence. Yes.
Oh, so I saw a version that just cut off before the credits. Like we didn't even get
Hmm.
credits. It didn't even say directed by Andy Muschietti. It just
Oh
ended.
wow.
Uh, so interesting. Oh
Yeah.
wow. Okay, so we're gonna start with a very non-spoiler review of
Hmm.
our thoughts on the Flash. We'll take a break, and then after the break, we can really dig into some of the spoilers. And apparently some shit I haven't even seen, even though I've seen the movie too. So first of all, what were your non-spoilery impressions of a movie that folks like Stephen King and Tom Cruise have said are the greatest movie of all time?
It's not the greatest movie of all time, but it's a
Tom
great
Cruise is lying
super.
to us?
It's a great superhero film overall. I went in with I was trying to measure my expectations, but I was really excited for Andy Muschietti. He's a great director, directed the It films, and he has an amazing eye for visuals, for cinematography, brings out really great performances from all his various actors, and he really gets it. I really want to see more from him in the superhero space. And I think that, the script, like, it wasn't perfect, but I think that Christina Hodson and Joby Harold, they did an overall good job. And it was in those moments that really focused on character that this film really shined. And I also have to say the visuals in this film are absolutely spectacular. Like some of the best live action superheroes I've seen ever. And we're both wearing our Batman t-shirts. We're all both in this from Michael Keaton's Batman, and just old man Batman is everything. I love it so much. Michael Keaton delivered so well. And I have to say, listen, with all our various disclaimers about Ezra Miller, they gave an amazing performance, as both themselves, yeah, as both Barry Allen and the other Barry Allen. And also love Sasha Kaye as Supergirl. I wish we got more of her.
Mm.
I think that, the trailers like really hyped her up more than she was actually in the film. But for what she gave, it was a really great performance. And I would love to see her in other new DCU properties, including Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow. I think she'd give a fantastic performance in that. And yeah, I overall really enjoyed the film. It wasn't perfect, but yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and surprisingly, oh, maybe not surprisingly, but one character you didn't mention, and yes,
Mm.
I was totally in this for Michael Keaton. That's the only reason I was so excited for the Flash. I was kind of middling for most of this movie's production history until it was confirmed Michael Keaton was going to be in it, and then it was like, oh my god, this is the shot to the top of my to watch list. But I will say, the other Batman in the movie I was pleasantly surprised by, and Ben Affleck has said this is his favorite time playing Batman in all of the films he's done. And I can see why. Like, I wonder what the Snyderverse fans will think, because it is very different from particularly like BVS Batman. But it also feels like the most Batman Ben's ever been. Just the way he's bantering with Alfred and Barry, the action sequence that he goes through, like that's the most Batman shit I've ever seen on screen. People will talk about the warehouse
It was
fight
so good.
or whatever, but like Batman on a bat cycle chasing bad guys, flying through the air with his cape and his grappling gun, like it's what I've always wanted to see, more so than even like the Pattinson stuff and the Nolan stuff, right? Like this is full on, and he's wearing a blue and gray costume. Like
Right.
that was really
Yeah.
cool. And even his scenes as Bruce, like you see it in the trailer when he and Barry are talking about, you know, going back in time, and you could also destroy like there's a sadness to his Bruce, like where he says like these scars is what makes us, like such a great Bruce Wayne like speech. I just want to give Ben Affleck his flowers. This is his goodbye as
100%.
Batman, and say what you will about the Snyderverse and this being his swan song, and I don't think that's a spoiler to say that Ben's not coming back as Batman after this. But it was nice to see, and I just want to give Ben, a shout out for a great Batman, as brief as it is.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that I didn't really watch the Snyder verse was not to my personal taste, so I didn't
Yeah.
watch much of Ben Affleck as Batman. I've watched like scenes of him on YouTube and such, but this was really solid. And it had that trademark Bruce Wayne gruffness, but also a heart to it and some humor sparked in there. And it was an overall really good balance. So I'm really
Yeah.
glad to hear you say that this was like a really great swan song for him as Batman.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing about Batman, that why I've been a fan of the character my entire life. And folks joke about it all the time. It's like, why would you purport to having like the billionaire who beats up, poor people as your favorite superhero? But the thing about, and there's a funny joke about that in the movie too, where Batman talks about like other ways he could have helped humanity than just dressing up as a bat and punching justice in the face. But he's my favorite character because there's just so many ways that character can be interpreted. And you and I have talked about this. Like, I think there's been an over reliance on the gruff, grim Frank Miller Batman, and they forget that like an Adam West Batman exists, a Kevin Conroy Batman exists, right? Even the George Clooney, Val Kilmer Batman. Like, I feel like in both Batmans we get in this, there is such a great blend of serious
Yeah.
and dark, but also light and humorous. And that's what makes Batman such a great character, that it can be all things and not, think about like the Wayne family webcomic, that version of Bruce Wayne and that version of Batman, that's as valid as like, the loner, gruff Frank Miller version. And I think we kind of see like a version of Batman as a dad when he's with the Barrys and Kara, you know what I mean? So like, I just like the fact that we got to see the various versions of Batman in this movie.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that for me, Batman works best when you do lean into, the darkness and gruffness, but still, again, have that heart in there and have, that heart of gold, because Bruce Wayne is someone who loves his fellow man so much. By the way, on that point of like, he could do more to like help the city. I know that the comics have addressed this multiple times. He actually funds many social programs and charities, and like he does a lot for Gotham's infrastructure as
And
well as
and
punch the
and to,
bad
and to be
guys.
fair to
Yeah.
those critics, it's like that would be a boring ass comic book. I mean, come on. Like,
Right.
who wants to read a Batman comic book where it's like a boardroom and he's figuring out how to like, philanthropy? Like, come on. Like, I know a lot of times it's people being facetious, but like Batman, if Batman would just put his money into like, orphanages, it's like, okay, that's fine off panel. I don't need like 22 pages of Batman in philanthropy meetings. You know what I'm saying?
No, but not in philanthropy meetings, like where he's just meeting with Gotham
No,
citizens. Like
I
I
know.
love that sort of thing. You know what I mean?
I know.
But anyway, that's a conversation for another podcast. Like, but no, it was great. The Flash is a great Batman film.
Well, let me ask you, as because again, we talked about it. The impetus for our excitement for this movie is that it does round out the Batman trilogy we were robbed of. I mentioned Val Kilmer and George Clooney, but you can say that those are alternate versions of the Burton Bat. I mean, it's fuzzy on like the continuity of those movies because there's a scene in Batman and Robin where you see the Two-Face and Joker costume. You're like, oh, so is George Clooney supposed to be an extension of Val Kilmer? And of course, Gordon and Alfred are carried over. So, but continuity didn't matter in the '90s, so it's not like that's a big thing. So we didn't get the third Tim Burton movie. Keaton had signed on originally. I think Robin Williams was in negotiations to play Riddler, and those things fell apart.
Oh my god, I would have loved that.
Yeah. I mean, those things fell apart eventually, and then they moved Tim Burton off the project. And when Tim Burton left, Keaton left, and the rest is history. So we never got the conclusion of the Burton Keaton Batman trilogy. As that, how do you feel the Flash kind of rounds out the Keaton verse in a sense?
It's interesting. And I say this as having just read the Batman 89 comics like a few months ago, and they're really good and a really fantastic continuation of like Batman Returns. I interpreted this version as another branching off from that timeline. So I didn't see this as like this is the definitive end of like Burton's Batman. No,
Mhm.
this is just like part of this really messed up universe that Barry accidentally created, and it happens to be this version of Batman.
I see.
I suppose like but this is a version of Batman, where he's alone, where he doesn't have any of his allies. This is something we've seen in media often, like whether that's Dark Knight Returns, whether that's in Batman Beyond, at least initially for Bruce Wayne. And it's very realistic. As much as we love Batman, we want him to be happy and have his happy ending because he's done so much to deserve it. He is someone who will so often self-isolate and just feel like he's not done enough and just like be in his depressed hole. And that's another part of why like so many people love this character. They envision themselves like maybe of him having that sort of future because that tracks for Bruce Wayne. And it's like, as Batman fans, we hope that he can break out of it. But the thing is, in this movie, without giving too much away, he does break out of it. He does rise to the call to action. He does become a hero again because, like, and again, I don't want to get too into spoilers, but like there's such a great reckoning in this film with his reasoning for why he did what he did as Batman, for his impetus to heroism to try to avenge his parents when like he knows that doing so won't bring them back, but he still feels compelled to, and that maybe it's just enough to do it because it's the right thing to do. And him seeing Barry like do this, it's just so good. I love
Yeah,
these character dynamics so much, and it's just I really think that Andy Muschietti, like, he really got to the core of what Batman's drive truly is, and it was spectacular.
I think one of the praises for this film that's been in the air ever since it was released at CinemaCon and the first kind of like initial reactions came out was that it was full of emotion and full of heart, and you could see that I think even in the original Super Bowl trailer, right? Like the focus on Barry and Nora, and his relationship to his mom, and we'll talk a little bit about that again. You are our resident Flash TV show expert, so I wanted to, having that just end and this kind of coming in its wake, I wanted to compare and contrast perhaps the way they treat Flashpoint in the movie and the way they treat Flashpoint in the TV series. But the heart and emotion is paramount to the story, and I think that does shine through, and not just in the Barry and the family, but even as you said with Bruce and Barry, and that and we'll get into spoilers later, but like there's a scene between them at the end that like really got me, you know, and I think that's kind of what you're talking about, just like Bruce's realization of why he's a hero, and it's really great, and it reminded me in reverse of like particularly in the DCEU, there's a special bond between Flash and Batman, and in the Whedon cut of the Justice League movie, that which everyone hates, and I understand why, but I will admit there is a sequence between Bruce and Barry when they're, I think it's their first mission underground, and Barry's like, I don't know how to be a hero, and Bruce says, just save one. And then like that was a Whedon thing that's not in the Snyder cut, but I really like that. It really liked Bruce motivating Barry to be a hero. And we kind of get that in reverse with a different Bruce and Barry. You know what I mean? And it was just really nice to see like their relationship play out. And let's continue in the non-spoiler territory, because I mean, I will also say that it's really hard to talk about this movie without spoiling it. Like,
Yeah.
so much of the cool stuff is like when you're geeking out in the theater, which we'll save for later. And again, I'm hearing that there are things that I didn't see in my screening. So you got a finished version of the movie, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
I got an unfinished version, so I'm a little jealous. But you mentioned Sasha Calle as Supergirl. I thought she was amazing. You're right. Her screen time is limited, but you can kind of get that sense even from the trailers, because like I'll also say this about like watching trailers, and Brittany and I talk about this all the time. One of the reasons she doesn't do some of the episodes, like you and I have had to podcast, because she's like, I don't want to watch any more trailers, and I totally respect that, because I almost
100%.
feel like I wish I didn't see any trailers for this movie, because I mean, I don't know if this is spoilery, but like I feel like if you watch enough trailers, you can piece together how the movie goes.
Yeah. I think that I will have to say, like, as someone who's watched all the trailers, I think it struck a really good balance
Mm.
overall. And it may appear like things are one way when really
Yeah,
like there's another crux of a plot in here that is more compelling than what you initially see.
that's true. But I did like some of the most geek out moments. I was like, oh, I wish I didn't know this 6 months ago, right? Like you want to get nuts, let's get nuts. Like I knew it was coming, and it still works. It works totally well in the
Same, yeah.
context of the
I
film.
cheered at that moment, and when he said, "Yeah, I'm Batman," I
Yeah,
lost it.
I
It was
totally,
so good.
yeah, exactly. But there's a sense. It's like the fact that you didn't know Steve was going to catch Mjolnir when it happened. I wish I didn't know he was going to say, "Let's get," you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. It's trivial. It's not. It's a minor nitpick, but it's totally my own fault, right? Like no one's forcing me to watch all of the trailers. but
I mean, you
but
run a pop culture website, so you kind of have to be honest.
I guess it's the gift and the curse. But yeah, talk about Sasha Kaye because I thought she was amazing.
Yeah, I think what really struck me was there was such a quiet strength to her performance, and she carried the trauma, the like emotional weight of what Kara Zor-El had been through. I've been a Supergirl fan like all my life, and she just magnificently played the role. And again, I just wish we had more of her. And it's like it's sort of frustrating because like I wish we had more of her. I wish there was more I could talk about. And what I could talk about is just spoilers. So it's hard.
Yeah, well, and we will get to the spoilers. So like, do not fret, and we'll properly warn folks who have not seen the movie when the spoiler section comes, because again, there's just so much I want to geek out about when it comes to some of the things that I didn't expect. To your point, like you know, there are things that the trailer gives away, and there are things that the trailer doesn't give away. One thing that it kind of like, depending on the trailer you see, is that, and then people have said this who have seen the movie, it's a lot more humorous than that initial trailer, especially. Right? We talked about how that first Super Bowl trailer was very emotional, was very much focused on like Barry and his mother, and you don't realize like there's jokes in this like 30 seconds into the movie, right? And the humor kind of like stays consistent throughout. And I wouldn't say it's overly jokey, but it's definitely funnier than I anticipated. What did you think of the humor?
Yeah, I thought it was really funny. I thought it was steeped in character and like moments that like geekier fans may know about. And just like I was like, this isn't exactly funny, but like when Danny Elfman score swell with the Batcave and Batman and everything, I was just grinning ear to ear. This is just like I complain about like fan service so often, but as a DC fan, I was like, yes, yes, this is everything I could have wanted. And in a way, like that's funny in and of itself, like how easily they're able to tap into our nostalgia and just just give us a really great treat that honestly worked. Like what I've said before is like I don't mind nostalgia bait if it makes sense for the story. And this made sense in a lot of ways. This is a multiverse story. Oh my god, can I just fucking say this was a million times better than anything Multiverse of Madness did. Like it was just such
I
a
was actually going to
flat,
like,
like, yeah.
I was going to bring in the Marvel piece of it because, I until Across the Spider-Verse, right? Like that is clearly the best multiverse movie ever. But compared in the live action space, compared to Multiverse of Madness and even No Way Home, like I feel like
Mhm.
No Way Home doesn't really like, to me, and this, please put your pitchforks down. To me, the nostalgia does, like, the only time I really enjoyed the nostalgia was with the Peters. Like I
Yeah,
thought
yeah.
Norman and Electro and like having it just the Doctor Octopus stuff, like it was fine. Like No Way Home was fine. I'm not saying it's bad, but I was like, I didn't really care until Toby and Andrew showed
Yeah.
up. You know,
As someone who is like a No Way Home fan, it does rely very heavily on what came before. It acts sort of as a culmination of those previous Spider-Man
Mhm.
movies, whether in the MCU or not. And on its own, unless it's like really focused on the Peter journey, which like I will just like say straight up, like I used to be a big fan of the MCU Spider-Man, but the more I've thought about it, the more I'm like, oh no, they're just lost so much of the thing. It says, after seeing Across the Spider-Verse, which by the way is one of the best films of the year, best films ever. It's love The Flash, but like it did not hold a candle to Across the Spider-Verse.
Right. And then we couldn't expect it to. Yeah. Across the Spider, I mean, Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse together, and plus, the third and Beyond the Spider-Verse. Like,
next level.
It's good. Yeah, there's no way that you can touch. It's kind of like how, Mask of the Phantasm is always considered the best Batman movie, so you have to quantify that. But we're talking about live action here, right? So like, yeah, totally get that. But to your point, compared to Multiverse of Madness, at least, which at least had multiverse in the title, and you were like expecting, okay, let's get some madness in the multiverse. And my biggest complaint of Doctor Strange movie was like, it's called the Multiverse of Madness, but we only really see one other universe, and it's kind of a shitty universe. You know what I mean? Like, we don't really get to spend. I mean, I guess that's true here. In essence, you're seeing. Well, okay, getting too much into spoiler territory, but like, you spend the majority of the movie in one universe. You're in the Michael Keaton universe, but like, I don't know. I just felt like, compared to Doctor Strange, why did they even make that movie? You know what I mean? It really contributed nothing.
I'm just so down the MCU as a whole, honestly. It just, again, Spider-Verse and DC are giving me what my comic book loving heart wants. So
yeah. Well, and that's quite a turn, that the DC universe is, more enjoyable than the Marvel universe at this point.
Oh my god.
Before we take a break, and then
a few years now.
Yeah. Before we take a break and dive into like really spoilers, because as you can tell, it's I can't talk about it without like worrying about spoiling. I don't know if this is a spoiler, but I did like the new DC Studios introduction video thing. Like, they got rid of the what's been like for the last 10 years with the animated, Superman and Wonder Woman DC logo.
I was wondering while watching that if that was something they just did for this movie to show like the various incarnations of DC logo, like i.e. the multiverse. But if that is a new intro, I would love that. It was really great.
I think that's a good point, because it's also like, this is the 100th anniversary of Warner Brothers, and I wonder if it's also like an acknowledgement of like the history of Warner Brothers in DC too. So, I mean, is that considered a spoiler? Like, title cards?
No, it's the intro. It's fine. It's fine.
So yeah, we want to dig into like really, really, really big deal spoilers. So we're going to take a break, and if you're watching this on our YouTube, you can tune into the full podcast on the June 19th, or whenever, the Monday after The Flash actually comes out. We will have
it comes out on June 16th, so June 19th. Yeah, June
19th is the Monday, so we will have the full podcast, so you can tune in to any of your favorite podcast listening devices and check out the rest of our spoilery recap of The Flash.
Fanboys, professional artists, and professors. Maybe a nerd who's just like you, talking about the things that you like too. So I invite you to the NOC. In full color, you see me. The Hard Knock Life.